On the left side, actually towards the back, is a blue evaluation form. Yeah, absolutely. Here's a couple extras if anybody needs these. And I'm going to have everybody fill that out. Whenever we do a workshop, we do that, and it's for multiple reasons. One of them is for attendance. When we're doing these things, we want to know how many people are coming and if they're effective. The second reason is on the back. There is an evaluation where you can give me a score, and you can tell me if I can do better with either my presentation skills, with the content, the materials. The venue, I guess, is one that you probably won't score me on today, or just tell me it was a perfect venue. But those are the things that we're looking for so that we can try to always improve ourselves and do better with the presentation. And the third reason is if we have a few minutes after, and I'll try to wrap up a couple minutes early today, we always have door prizes that we give away. And they're sponsored by Education Minnesota. They're all valued at roughly $20 to $30. But then everybody can walk away with a little bit of something and have a chance to win as well. So for those that don't know me, and I know most of the people in this room at this point, but my name's Tony Schutte. I've been a financial advisor in this area since 2006. My education is I went to St. Olaf College. My degree was in economics and finance. My claim to fame is I did a lot of PSEO. Are you guys familiar with what that is, the post-secondary enrollment options? I did that for pretty much my entire senior year of high school. So I graduated St. Olaf after 3.5 years. I was able to get out early, which is fairly rare when you go to a private school like that. And it's just, you know, I was good at school and I really like learning and like doing new things, but I'm more of a hands-on, try to do it yourself type of a person. I wasn't as book studious as what I thought I was when I first entered college, so I was actually excited to leave and actually get a job and be able to do something practical with the knowledge that I learned there. And then I went and I worked for a private company in the cities for a couple of years. And the reason I did that, I always wanted to have this job, but my dad has been doing this for 35 years. And it was a phase of my life where as much as I love Dad, I just could not work with him every day. And I think every child has gone through that at probably some point with a parent or a grandparent or somebody within their family. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then this opportunity opened up for me to come down to this Rochester area, because he's north of the cities in Cambridge, which it felt like was far enough away that I could have some autonomy and some freedom, but yet it's still what I've always wanted to do. I grew up watching somebody that was in a small business, and so we had good years and we had bad years as a household, and we had to have those conversations about money as we grew up. And I was always interested in this particular field, so this has been a good fit for me. Additionally, my mom is a teacher, her sister's a teacher, her other sister's an aunt, she has a brother that's a teacher, her dad worked for John Deere for 35 years of his life. So as far as union groups and public service, I have a lot of family members on one side of my family that are very much attuned to that. So this felt like a really good fit, that I've got my dad's side of the family that we're all ex-farmers that are somehow in some sort of professional money management things, whether it's a financial advisor or mortgages or insurances. And then my mom's side of the family that was all public service oriented. So being able to work with people that have pensions and that work for, I mean, you guys don't directly work for, but for a state department of some sort, was a good fit for me. So now the presentation itself, any questions on me? Who I am, I think, like I said, I think I know most of the people in here. So this presentation is called Accumulating and Managing Assets. It's been around for 20 years. It gets tweaked every couple of years. We do have a couple numbers that changed this year that I just haven't gotten updated in this presentation. So I'll reference those when they get there. It's not a huge deal, but just to send it back through compliance before coming over here, I just decided I'd just tell you to cross them off and change the two numbers that are different inside of there. And what I do is I'm a financial planner. So we ask people about a lot of different aspects of their financial life. So this slide, which is one of the first ones you see, is actually an exercise that we'll have people do where you can score yourself. And the whole idea is we want to get a bullseye. So if you give yourself a 1 on any of those topics, it means that you're very knowledgeable and you have the answers to whatever questions you might have on that topic. If you give yourself a 7, it means you've probably never even thought about that particular topic before. But it's a nice, simple exercise for people to do just to give yourself a score so that when you are planning or preparing for retirement or anything financially related, you at least know the areas where you need to gain some more education. And just to give you a quick update on what all these are, a quick paraphrase of it, retirement lifestyle is kind of a tricky one because what do you picture retirement? And how do you picture retirement? And we all picture it differently. Some people want to stay around and spoil their grandkids as much as possible. There's other people that want to scuba dive off the coast of Belize, or, you know, go skydiving, or whatever they decide to do with their time and their money. But there's very different cost outlays for those. Now, ideally, what we all do when it comes to retirement lifestyle is we think about what we want our retirement to be, we calculate some costs, and then we plan to get there. That makes sense, right? But that's not what anybody actually does. What we actually do is we save as much as we can, we deal with life's whatevers, curveballs that it throws at us, and we continually try to save as much as possible until we get close to retirement, and then we look at our savings, our benefits, what we've accumulated, and that determines our retirement lifestyle. Typically, we're more reactive to this as opposed to proactive, and it's just because we're humans and we're Americans, and things come up where we have to spend money, and there's emergencies, there's orthodontia work and doctor visits and numerous different things that can throw a wrench in our plans. So if you know or are very confident what you want to do in retirement, then give yourself a 1 in that category. Now with your pension, is everybody in here a part of PERA or TRA? So one of the two?
Most are PERA.
Most are PERA, a couple TRA. Those are pension plans through the state of Minnesota. You don't have very much control over how those function. The state or legislation controls most of what happens with those state pension plans. And if you are a public employee within the state of Minnesota, you're participating in one of the state pensions. PERA is for pretty much everybody, the public employee retirement account. TRA is designed for specifically just teachers. They're very similar. There's just a couple of little tweaks. So if I refer to PERA or TRA within this, and that might not be your particular plan, understand that they're so similar that I talk about them kind of ubiquitously, kind of like they're the same. There's a couple of very small tweaks between them, but I will cover that. But with your pension, there's 3 main decisions that you have to make when it comes to TRA or PERA. One is, when do I turn it on? One of them is, when I do turn it on, do I just pay myself, or do I want to take less money per month to provide a guarantee to somebody else? Could be a spouse, a child, anybody for that matter. They do have restrictions on that. They only give you 6 options for beneficiaries, but which one of those 6 do I take? And the third decision is, they'll let you front load your pension, and they'll let you, if this is my normal amount of money that I'd make, they'll let me take more money up front. It's called acceleration. They're going to give me more of it for 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever it ends up being. But then at some point in time, the amount of money I'm getting per month is going to drop and be below what my base number would have been for the rest of my life. So they're going to throw some on the front end and then take it away from me on the back end. And I'll go through that in here a little bit as well. Now, the simplest way I can describe TRA to people is it's really based on 2 components. If you want a bigger benefit through your pension, through TRA or PERA, there's really only 2 ways to do it. Make more money. Something called your high 5 salary. You guys heard that term? 5 years that are consecutive. They're going to look at every year you've worked in a TRA or a PERA covered position, and they're going to find the 5 consecutive years that average out to be the highest. So typically they're your last 5 years, but not always. If you're doing overloads or extra assignments, or you've changed jobs. Like I had a client that worked up in Apple Valley, Egan, Rosemont. Well, he's now down in this area in a small district not too far from here. His salary scale, he works there because his wife works there and his kids go to school there and he's coaching football and all that. But he will never hit the salary he was making in ISD 196. He just won't, because their salaries are so much higher. So his high 5 is done. Now the other thing that'll get you a bigger benefit is work more years. Because they look at the number of years that you put into the plan, and that's the percentage of your high 5 that you're going to get. So if you work 30 years, on average you'll get about half of your high 5 back to you. So if I want more money, work more years, make more money. Not what any of us want to do, right? And it's always a balancing act of, I want to retire early, but I want to be able to afford it. So it's trying to find where that needle kind of settles to a comfortable position. Now with Social Security, the questions on that, I mean, once again, this is kind of meant to just be a quick overview of all these different topics.
So you'll get half of your high 5 per year?
Yeah, on average.
It's
So, well, I mean, if your high 5 salary is $100 grand a year, Yeah, you might get up to 50 grand a year out of the state pension. Forever. You know, the average teacher that retires, their salary is right between 60 and 70 grand. They get about 3 grand a month, gross. So there's taxes that are withheld from that. But 36,000 a year, if I just do simple math, 30,000 a year, if you're retired for 30 years, 3 times 3 is 9, that's $900,000.
And then, how long does it take until you get that full benefit of working at the organization?
So, like, their full retirement age is 66 for anybody that was hired after 1989. That doesn't qualify for the Rule of 90. So, if you retire prior to 66, just like with Social Security's full retirement age for most people is 67. If I retire early, they'll let me turn my benefit on, but they're gonna pay me less per month. But if I just look at the actuarial science behind it, the math, they're looking at a bell curve, right? And the number of people that retire, their life expectancy, what they're gonna pay them, and they look 1 and 2 standard deviations to each side of that. And as they're looking at that math, they basically assume that everybody that retires, if you have 30 years of service and you're 60 years old, you're gonna receive the same total dollars from same salary, everything, from TRA. How do you wanna spread it out? Do I wanna spread it out over 40 years? Do I wanna spread it out over 20 years? Do I wanna put a bunch on the front end and not as much on the back end? Do I want an even payment all the way through? So that's really what we're talking about when we talk about these individual options. Because if I'm TRA, and I'm an actuary in the back of the room, I'm just looking at numbers. I'm not looking at your life expectancy or your life expectancy. I'm looking at the state average. And according to the state average, most women are gonna live till 89 and a half, and most men are gonna live till about 85 and a half. So 49.9% lose the game and die early. And 49.9% win and live longer and end up exceeding the amount the TRA plan that they were gonna give them. Does that make sense? So,
Can you explain the Rule of 90? Probably
yeah, was anybody here hired before 1989? One? So the Rule of 90 is an old law that was passed in May of 89, and you had to be hired before June of 89 to qualify. So, work that math out in your head, right? Basically it was passed for people that were hired. And they knew the next people hired would not get that. But what it said is if you look at your years of service and your age, and once they add up to 90, so if I'm 60 years old and I have 30 years of service, that adds up to 90, then there would be no penalties to the pension. They wouldn't look at that age 66 as the full age. However, they use 2 different math formulas to calculate this. One of them is if I was hired before 89, they have different multipliers, so my years of service add up differently. One of them is if I was hired after 89, so they have both of these math equations. Well, by state law, they have to calculate both of them for every single person that retires under the state pension, and they have to give you whichever one is bigger. Well, because the math is different, but one gives me full benefits earlier, one gives me full benefits later, there always ends up being a break-even point or a crossover as to when one is worth more than the other. And that age in TRA, or in PERA, tends to be around 63. So even people that qualified for the Rule of 90, if they work until age 63 or beyond, that benefit actually becomes a moot point because they're going to use the math formula that's going to pay them better, which is probably going to be the post-89 higher math formula in most situations. Now, to expand on TRA a little, the way it really works is all the years that you acquired up until 2006, they gave you credit for 1.7% of your high-five salary. Minneapolis joined the pension in 2006. They had to pay into the pension. They wanted everybody to contribute more, but the rest of the state said, no way, we don't want to do that. We're not bailing out Minneapolis. So they actually said, kind of their olive branch to that is we're going to move your multiplier from 1.7 to 1.9. So all of the years past 2006 accrue at a bigger rate. I'd rather get 1.9% for each year that I work instead of 1.7. Versus in Rule of 90, and it might be confusing you guys, I'm getting into a lot of numbers here, but for those that get it, your first 10 years only accrued at 1.2%. Well, I'd rather them build up at 1.7 than 1.2. The bigger the number, the better. So, if you retired in 2026, that would be from 2006 to 2026, 20 years that it accrued at 1.9%. Every other year that you worked going backwards would have accrued at 1.7. Nice thing is you don't have to know all this math. You don't have to memorize this. You can go to their website, minnesotatra.org. You have to have your 6-digit TRA number, create your username and password. You can literally type in, or PERA, sorry, that would be the Public Employee Retirement Association. I believe it's MN. They don't have to spell the word, MNPERA.org. You go in there, same thing, create your username, and they will, and you can use their retirement estimator, and it'll give you a pretty decent idea of what your benefits are gonna be, but it always comes out in a grid because they have all the different beneficiary options you can take. So it's really common to have people go to the website, print out those scenarios, look at, want to retire in 2025, 2028, and 2031, or 2 or 3 years ago, and bring them in and say, what the heck do all these numbers mean? I have that happen all the time. And luckily, I know these well enough that usually we can cross out over half of the options because they don't apply to you, and just try to simplify it down and make your decisions, as opposed to choosing between 6, maybe between 2 or 3 different choices. And we're still on pensions. We're still on TRA, PERA here. I didn't move on, but we got some questions. Other questions on that?
How long do you have to be here before you are invested?
Vested, 6 years.
6 years?
Mhm. Basically.
What does that mean?
So if you work in a PERA covered position for 2 years, they're gonna penalize you on top of anything else. Once you've been there 6 years, they get rid of those. And vesting means you gain access to over a 6-year time frame, it'd be like what, 18%. So you get access to 18% the first year, and 36% of your benefits the second year. So it goes up by that every year until you complete the 6 years and you get to the 100%
So
vesting.
you still get something.
You still get something.
You don't get this level like you could after 6 years.
Correct.
Okay, so if 5 years, I've been here 5 years, the same person like me has been here 5 years when I retire.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
No one specific.
Yeah, right. I would still be invested, but if I retire at, my 5th year, after doing my 5th year, I'd still get a certain percentage.
You get some, but less.
A lot less?
So remember, you only have 5 years of multipliers. So 5 years times 1.9 is, 5 times 2 is 10. So 10 minus 0.5, so you're at 9.5% of your high 5 salary. And then if you're not vested, you're gonna get a percentage of that. So from a dollar figure, it's probably not gonna seem like that much. To go from $300 a month to $220 isn't that much. But to go from $3,000 to $2,200 is quite a bit from a percentage standpoint, talking about. So that's,
Did your retirement date just change?
We've got you for 1 more year.
Don't encourage her.
That was 5, I don't know where I got 5 from.
I'm pretty sure it's 6, I can look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's what, last time I looked, that's what it was. What do you think it is?
My gut was kind of 5 too, but I could be right on. You
They
could be
changed-
right on the
so
6
this
because
is
they
one thing.
tweaked some
So
stuff
now
recently.
here's what they did to kind of patch the rule of 90, is they put a policy in place called 62 and 30. Once I'm age 62 and have 30 years of service, they soften the penalties, or reduce the amount of penalties that they give you. And in doing that, they made a lot of other changes to it. They may have lowered the vesting requirement to 5 years, I'd have to double check that. Because they made several different changes to it with that. That was the good piece, and there were some others that weren't as positive that came along with it. Like everything, when it's budget neutral and they pass a law, something's good, something's not.
Okay, yeah, if you could just check, that'd be great.
And it would actually be helpful, just go to create a username and password,
Yeah.
get on their account and look up that information.
And
There's a lot of good info, it'll tell you your salaries every single year that you've worked. So, Brady just looked it up, he said it is
Yeah.
5 years.
You are vested
Bad
PERA after 36 months of public service, 60 months for members hired after June of 2010.
Date holds.
So, okay, thank
It's
you.
.org, just.
So that was a
Dot
part of
org.
that.
5 years.
MNPERA.org.
They have counselors too. If you really want to meet with one of their counselors up in the cities, they're not supposed to be giving advice, but they can give you all your data and all your information. And they can also answer really difficult questions that I can't answer, like, I was married and divorced and my spouse was awarded this percentage of this and how will that affect me? Or I had 4 years in TRA because I was a teacher for a while and then left, and now I have 16 years in PERA, and how do those all add up together? Because they will coordinate other service credits within the state if you've worked in other state-covered positions. And it's very difficult for me to give that information. That's something that you have to meet with the counselor to talk to them about, because they can coordinate all that stuff together with their computer system, as opposed to we're just trying to use 2 different websites to do it.
They also do their workshops here. You've probably seen them
Mhm.
in our building, so they have their workshops here, so.
Yes, and they have a girl that's been working in the Mankato area that's been coming over here a lot. Her name's Sonia, and I've heard really good things about her. She's done a really nice job with TRA, PRA, and helping counsel people through that.
I just went yesterday and met with TRA in the afternoon, just so I sat down with them and I wanted to know what it looks like, what will my pension look like when I'm 62, 65,
Yeah.
70. So they printed everything off and explained everything to me. It was about a half an hour meeting, and it made perfect sense when I walked out of there. I had a ton of questions walking in, but they did a really nice job breaking it down for me, and they answered all your questions. There were a lot of stuff I did not know about.
You can get a lot of that information off of their website too.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask them which option should I take, they can't.
Yeah, see, and I did that, I set up a username, password, I printed all that data off, but a lot of it I didn't understand what, like, there was a 50%, 75%, I didn't know what all that meant.
Mhm.
And, I mean, now, it's definitely worth the half an hour, it's free, you can set up the appointment online, so. Highly recommend it.
Through the Parasite?
You can do PERA or TRA, they both have.
Is, can you cash it out? Is that an option?
You absolutely can. It is not financially recommended by anybody.
Okay.
If you want to cash it out, you'll walk away with a third, probably. And the refund value looks great on paper. It'll say like 350 grand or something like that. But if they're gonna pay you 900,000 while you're retired, would I rather have 350 now or 900 slowly drip to me? I'd rather have the 900 slowly drip to me personally. Yeah.
You might have alluded to this during all that number conversation, but I missed
No,
it,
I
so.
know. I know. Yes.
Yes.
Good question.
So I'm gonna work here forever, so.
She's gonna
Just
follow
because
in my
everybody in this room needs to know that.
So I have I'm gonna have 42 years in here,
Awesome.
by the time that I retire. So if I retire at 62 and have 42 years, is there any benefit for me working here forever versus age? Like, does that drop down at a certain point? Or is it like 62 is like, I have to be 62?
Mm-mm.
Or is it like, once I
No,
get 40
You can retire
years?
at 58, you can retire at 60, but
Right.
remember, you're not 66, so you're not full retirement age.
Right,
So for each year that you retire earlier, they're gonna withhold some money,
okay,
because they have to pay you for longer.
sure,
But at 62, they've reduced the penalties now.
If you have 30 years of
Yeah.
service,
at least 30.
at least
Okay.
30, and age 62.
Yeah.
Okay.
and on.
That's good to know, thank you.
That was a big deal when they passed that for full career people that didn't
Yeah.
qualify for the 90.
Just a little quick example with that, when I ran with a client, and we did just from age 60 to 61 with 30 years of service, his benefit went up by like $30 or $40. We went to that age 62 in the 30, it went up by $200.
Oh, wow.
Just in that extra year, and I just an example, I just recently did that with them. So it's pretty significant, that 62.
And I forgot to do this in the meeting, for anybody that hasn't met Brady, Brady also works in my office with me. So we kind of handle this area of the state. We've got a
Nice to
third
meet you
gentleman that
guys.
works out in the Winona area. His name's Ryan. He's a teacher, so he does that full-time, and he does this part-time in some summers. But just to alleviate us having to drive down to Rushford and Caledonia all the time, he helps us out a lot with some of the geographical constraints that we have where we're located. And so Brady's kind of handling, it's not set in stone, but kind of he has like 52 and east of that a little bit, and I have 52 and west of that, and that's just basically where we lived. He grew up in the Zumbrota area, and I live in the Casson area, but we have a lot of overlap between those two. We work as a team in the office, but just wanted to delegate some different player positions so that we're covering the field. So Social Security actually is kind of a similar conversation to the pensions. That when do I turn it on? Do I turn it on at 62? Do I wait till 67? Or do I wait all the way until 70? And when I read all the books and all the articles, everything says to wait until 70 to turn on your Social Security. Because they're gonna pay you $2,500 a month versus $1,500 a month. But if I live till my full retirement age, or my full, not retirement, full life expectancy age of 85 or 89, I'm gonna pull an extra $100,000 out of Social Security. And that's what all the books say. But I challenge you to look at it from a little bit of a different angle. And this is a personal experience that I had with my grandparents, and some people have heard this story. But on my dad's side, my grandpa was a farmer his whole life, so retirement for him was an excuse to clean out a corn crib and get a band and a keg, basically. But, yeah, he didn't really stop.
Go Grandpa.
Yeah, but, he retired, and first they bought the topper on their truck, because they decided they wanted to go camping and explore all these different campsites. Well, then they kind of got sick of that setup, so then they went and got the motorhome, like the RV, so that grandma could go to the bathroom while they were driving down the road and make sandwiches and that sort of stuff. Well, then they were towing cars all over the country, and so then they got sick of that, so then they got the fifth wheel, right? So they could tow the mobile hotel room wherever they went. And anytime a grandkid was born, they came for like 2 weeks to a month. Because I have a sister that's 10 years younger than me, so I remember it. That they set up shop, plugged into the shed that my dad had, but they did laundry and mowed lawn and helped clean. And it was stuff when you have an infant around the house that's invaluable to have. And they wanted to do that. That was fun for them. And then in the winters, they drive down and spend a couple of weeks. They had some different spots they went to in Texas. Well, then, it got to the point where, the fifth wheel, grandma still wanted to go to the bathroom while they're driving down the road, so they had to get rid of the fifth wheel. And then they got the big diesel bus, had the generator on it, and had 13 slide outs, and it was, you put the bumper sticker on the back, we're spending all our kids' inheritance, and they traveled around to places, and then, it was like a switch flipped when they turned 80. And I don't know what it was, but if anybody has seen grandparents age, they turn 80 or 90, it's that 10 digit is always the one that shakes us up a little bit. But it's like they lose motivation to do stuff, or energy, health, memory, whatever it might be. And he did get in a small accident, but it was nothing major. It was like a tail light thing, but on an RV it's like a $1,000 tail light or something like that. But he just decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And they liquidated all of that stuff. And then they bought a little, in a retirement community, a little place down there. Got a golf cart so he could drive around, and they flew back and forth. And they were a lot more comfortable doing that because they just got uncomfortable driving. And so my grandparents spent a lot of money between age 60 and 80. From 80 until the day they died, any spending they had was non-voluntary. They had to, upgrade something, or they needed medical care, or they, it was because things broke, or we came into their house and said, hey, your shower's leaking. You've really got to fix this. So, when I look at Social Security, I know that you can get a lot more money out of it by delaying all the way until age 70 until you take it, if you live long enough, that's the catch. But when do you want to spend your money? And I think about that with myself all the time. As a financial planner, I should be saving every penny I make, but at the same time, I want to go out to eat, and I have kids, and I have a wife, and she wants me to take her on dates, and we want cars every once in a while when they wear out. So I think about it too, it's a balancing act. I want as much as possible, but it's also about the time you spend. I read an interesting article today that it's not about how shiny your coffee cup is, it's about what's inside of it. And we don't have to worry about the stuff we have. We have to worry about life and the essence of life and what are we enjoying. There's a lot of people that don't have a lot of nice stuff that are extremely happy, and a lot of people have a lot of really nice stuff that are not happy at all. And so I always challenge myself. This is an opinion, it's not a fact. But when you're looking at Social Security, think about those things. I'm not telling everybody to turn on at 62, but I'm telling you, look at your own situation and how you want to spend it. And I don't want everybody to delay till 70 just because that's what all the books say. Does that make sense?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, please do.
I thought I heard you, so retirement age, you had said 66 and 67?
Because we're talking about two different things, right? We're talking about the state pension. Terry and P are 66.
Oh, but Social Security is 67?
Mm-hmm. And it's actually a phase-in. Here, let me.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's based on the
So
year
see
you were
this?
born, doesn't it? Yeah.
So if you're born before 38, you can get 100% of your benefit at 65, 80% of your benefit at 62. For the baby boomers, their full retirement age is 66, and they get 75% if they turned it on at 62. For those born after 59, and I'm lumping everybody into that category in here, sorry if or not, but that'd be 67 for full age. Now, if they change this again, who knows what it'll be for me? I'm 37 years old. That's 30 years. How many legislative actions are gonna come through in the next 30 years? Now, I don't know what they'll do. Politicians have left Social Security alone because it's a death sentence politically and career-wise to tackle it. But at some point, they're gonna have to. That's just a numbers statement. Because we've all heard the numbers that it's gonna run out of money by, you know, they keep changing it, but it's like 2032 or something like that. And so then what? Then they've gotta do something about it. It might be 72 before I can get my full benefit. And we've talked about this in our office, and that's fine for me. But I have a buddy that he works construction, he's in excavation. He can't be digging holes at 67 years old. Or laying brick, or chipping out concrete, right? I mean, you can't, your body will fall apart. Electricians get to their upper 50s and their shoulders and back are shot. So it's easy to say that somebody in my career, potentially your career, should work until age 70, but it's harder to say that for the tradesmen out there, who are a bulk of our labor force. Yeah.
The other part of Social Security is where PRA, if you die, there's a death benefit, right?
Correct.
In Social Security, if you die, there's really no death benefit.
Well, so keep that in mind. In PERA, there might not be a death benefit if you die. It depends on which one of the payout options you take.
Okay.
You could take the highest payout option and then there would not be a death benefit.
Okay.
Or I could take less money and leave some sort of a residual benefit,
Right.
be it 100% of my check. That's gonna cost me the most money, because I'm leaving my exact check to my spouse if I die.
But I mean, I'm talking about before you retire.
If you were to pass away before you retire.
Yeah.
There's disability and death benefits on most plans that are out there.
But not for Social Security, that's what I'm saying. Social Security has nothing really.
If you have young children, there's something. If you have children under 21, there's some benefits to it,
Yeah,
but that's true too.
yeah.
Well,
I'm-
when my dad died, my mom started getting his higher social security.
So, if you're married, when somebody dies, whichever number's bigger is the one that sticks. So if people are debating delaying their social security, you wanna delay whoever has the bigger social security check. Because if it goes up by 6 to 8% per year, 6 to 8% of $2,000 is more than 6 to 8% of $1,000. Right? So you wanna delay that bigger check if you wanna wait until age 70. And it's not about you, it's about whoever's the last one to die. Because the second person living is gonna keep the biggest check. So that means the biggest check goes to your household for as long as you possibly can get it to go to your household for.
Screw him, I want my money.
That's right. Sucks that they make him delay till 70. That's the way to do it. And there's a lot of different planning options with Social Security. Because you could take it at 62, 64, if you have a spouse, they could take it at 62, 63, all the way up to age 70. Well, that's 9 different times you could turn it on, 9 different times if your spouse turns it on. So if I look at total options, 9 times 9 is you have theoretically 81 different Social Security options that you could take as a household. Now, nobody looks at that many, you look at 2 or 3, because a lot of them you just dismiss them because they don't make sense. But. So questions on Social Security?
How old do you have to be before you can still work and?
Full retirement age. So,
Okay.
if you turn Social Security on early, prior to being this age,
Yep.
right? You can, I'm skipping the slide. You can only make, and this is 2018's number, it's about $100 higher, but you can only make this much or they'll penalize you. Now, once you're that full age that we saw, that goes away. There are no penalties. You can make as much money as you possibly could, and there's no penalties to Social Security. It's only what they call if you turn it on early. That makes sense? Did I answer that? But you're right. So one reason I would tell people not to turn Social Security on early is because they want to leave their job, but they don't want to leave the workforce. Just don't want to keep doing the same thing with the same stress level in the same hours. And we actually have a term, it's becoming very popular, we call them the pre-retirees. And it's getting very common that people just want to leave the career they've had for the last 30 years for something that's less demanding on them mentally and or physically. So like my assistant's a great example. She was a counselor in Rochester for many, many years. And while she loved counseling the students, there was a lot of other changes that had happened to education that made her not love her job as much. And it got to where she wasn't as happy there. She wasn't looking forward to going in the morning. But she didn't want to stop working. So she retired from the school system, and now she happened to, I hired her, but she works 3 days a week for me, and that's perfect. She gets to spend 4 to 5 days a week with her family and with her grandkids, but she has a sense of accomplishment, she has some spare money, she has something that she can do, a reason to wake up those 3 days a week to refocus attention. And I've seen a lot of people do that. They retire because they're told to retire or because they hit a number, and then they sit at home for 3 months and twiddle their thumbs and they get bored and then go get a job doing something or start volunteering for every program they possibly can. And there's a lot of people that plan on doing that. It's intentional. I just want to change. Skip all this. Do you guys get any severance? Do you have anything in your contract about sick pay or sick days, vacation days?
Vacation days is what.
Vacation days.
Yeah.
That's what we're referring to when it comes to severance. This is contractual. A lot of schools have this where people get paid for sick days or vacation days when they leave their employer. And that's employer to employer. You have to know the specific place you work and how that works. And then where does the money go? That's the other thing about severance, is do they give you a check? Does it go into a 403B account? Or does it go into a health account? Those are kind of the 3 most common things that we run into. If they give you a check, everybody pays taxes on it, but you can use it immediately. If they give you a 403B, you choose when you want to pay the taxes, because when you pull it out is when you pay the taxes.
Do we
If
get
they-
a check, Dale?
Well, yeah, right now,
But that's at the end of each year, right?
yeah.
So this isn't tied to a retirement benefit for you guys, is it?
No,
Okay. You know, I'll just skip that section because it's not a part of your specific employer agreement. So don't worry about this, you can cross that off, you don't have to worry about it. With managing investments, this is actually one of the more complicated topics to talk about in this sort of a setting, just because of some of the words and language that we have to use around investments. Most people know stocks and bonds, but when you start talking about asset allocation, aggressive and conservative investing behaviors, buckets of money, things like that, this gets a little bit more complicated. So the one thing to keep in mind is while you're actively working, market volatility helps you. Because if I'm putting in $100 a month and the market goes down, now units are $10 a share, I bought 10 units. If the market goes up, now they're at $20 a share, I bought 5. Well, do I want to buy more when the market's down or when it's high? Down. And I'm doing that automatically. Do I want to buy less when it's up? Yeah, and I'm doing that automatically. It's called dollar cost averaging. And so as long as you're systematically putting money into your accounts every month, the volatility and the ups and downs of the markets help you. Now when I'm pulling money out, and the reverse effect happens. When the market's down, do I have to sell more units if I want 1,000 a month, or fewer? To sell more. When the market's up, I have to sell fewer. I want to sell more when it's up, not fewer when it's up. So when it comes to managing investments in retirement, we have to implement some different strategies than we did while people were working, when they want to start taking distributions and withdrawing money out of the accounts. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but for anybody that wants to educate themselves, there's a book written by a guy named Ray Lucia. I've read it a couple times. It's called like Live and Retire Smart, but it's Buckets of Money is what it's called. And he basically rewrote a book from the 80s called The Split Annuity Principle and updated everything. And it's probably like an intermediate level investment read. So if it's the first time you've ever read a book on managing money, it might not be the best one to start with, but it gives a lot of really good strategies, and I use these. I use these for my clients, actually implement these strategies on how to manage money and how to set up buckets. And the theory is I look at however much money I'm going to need for the next roughly 5 to 10 years. Now the nice thing is with a pension, you're not needing to draw quite that much off of your 403B or 401k or IRAs that you've done, versus if you don't have a pension, you're having to draw a significantly larger amount off of those every month and manage more of it. But bucket 1 needs to be safe. I don't care if it's in CDs or money market account, but I don't want any risk with that because I need that to live, to pay my bills. I don't want that to change. And if I have 5 to 10 years worth of money in there, then I can create a bucket too. And that might have a little bit of risk to it, not a lot, but a little bit, so that I can try to grow that. So if I run out of money in this one, I can tap into that one that doesn't have a lot of risk, but hopefully earning something. And then if I've done those right, and I have 5 to 10 years in this one, and 5 to 10 years in this one, then whatever's left of your assets goes into bucket number 3, which is risky, and all stocks. Because we don't know what the market's gonna do over a 12-month or 24-month time frame. But when we look at 10 to 20 years, we can be a lot more accurate with what the market's gonna do and how your accounts are going to perform. So if we can double this one over a 20-year time frame, then theoretically, I could repeat that process in perpetuity, just from the growth and interest on it. But then the money I'm taking out of every month, this has nothing to do with the market's ups or downs. I'm not selling that one. I'm selling this one. Does that make sense, how I'm trying to describe this? Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for an introductory read on? If you get things right now.
Yes, she's a columnist for the New York Times, and she took all of her columns and built a book out of it. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through it, and I zipped through the first half because it was pretty basic for me. Let me look, I don't remember what it's called, but let me look that up for you, and I'll try to get that information to you. Jane Bryant Quinn. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I think it's Jane Bryant Quinn that wrote that book. And that's a pretty decent one as far as just, the glossary in the back is nice. I want to learn about this, and you can just kind of jump right to those sections pretty quickly.
Thanks.
And she'll give kind of, it's opinion-based, because she's a columnist, and columns are more opinions than facts, really, so keep that in mind when you're reading it. But I found it to be pretty valuable. There's a lot of good information in there for people that are just trying to learn.
So how to make your money last?
It's something like that, or
Making the most of your money now.
you'll. Are you on Amazon?
Smart and simple financial strategies.
Yeah,
She has a lot out there.
There's a bunch of them. These guys make, keep in mind, this is always something I remember when I'm reading these books. They make more money off their books than they do exercising their own investment strategies.
So really, we should write books.
You could write a book. Susie Orman makes like 90% of her money on selling books and like 10% on doing what she says to do in the books. Or it was something, I heard some statistic a long time ago that kind of blew my mind. It was some major thing. And she has so much money, she can't really do what she even tells people to do in her books. Right? Because they gotta buy municipal bonds and take tax strategies, and like it's just a whole different game that they're playing. So
I know in addition to PERA, SSC offers a match on 403B.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about 403B?
Yep. So, here, let's just jump to that. Here, investments. Okay. No, yes, I mean, we're not getting into a lot of the details of this, but this is good. So what a 403B is it's a retirement account that gives you tax advantages. Essentially, a 403B is a section of the Internal Revenue Code. So it allows you to save money. Is there like a Reagan? Here, can I borrow this?
Sure.
Looks good.
Those are my figures. That was my retirement plan.
You got me. I normally ask, but yeah, you got me. Here's a picture so that I can describe this a lot easier.
Yeah, not surprised.
Throw me off for the rest of the day now. So, what the 403B is a lot like an IRA, if anybody's done those before. And if I save money, I can be taxed in 3 places. This is way oversimplifying our tax code, but just for the sake of this illustration. I can be taxed when I put money into it. I can be taxed if or when it grows, and I can be taxed when I pull money out of it. Now the 403B, all the dollars that go in there, go in without a tax. So that's a good deal. So they're gonna match, you put money away without taxes, and they'll actually give you some money into this as well. And then it grows without taxes. So the IRS likes to get paid, right? So when I go to yank these dollars out because I want to buy my boat, that's when the IRS makes me pay my taxes. Now, I'm going to expand on this a little just because you asked about the 403B, how the different tax laws work. So there's also Roth accounts. Has anybody heard of these? These are the opposite. The dollars that go into this are post-tax. So any dollars that were dumped into my bank account, those dollars were taxed. So essentially just think about it mentally like I'm just shifting money from my bank account into this. But then it grows without taxes. And I pull the money out without any taxes. So this one saves me taxes today. This one will save me taxes in the future. Versus if I compare it to like a bank account, and you could go out and buy a classic car or stocks or whatever you want with that, the money that was deposited there was taxed. And if I earn interest on it, I get a 1099 in the mail and get taxed. We actually probably got them this year because banks are starting to pay interest again, so people receive those. And this you might not pay taxes on in the case of a bank account because you paid them all the way through, but if you have some sort of a long-term capital gains due to holding onto the investment long enough, you could potentially have to pay taxes when you sold the investment as well. And actually the health account, for anybody that's doing HSAs, those are totally tax-free. So those are the best deal all the way through. So then usually people ask which one's better. Well, I don't know. It depends on your tax situation. It depends on taxes today, taxes 30 years from now, 10 years from now, whenever you want to access those dollars. What I do know is 403Bs are taxed, TRA is taxed, PERA is taxed, Social Security is taxed. The only thing I can access in retirement that's not taxed is this. So I've been suggesting a lot of people set those up just for tax diversification in retirement. Just to have something I can access at some point that isn't taxed. Because I have a lot of people that retire and they might have their mortgage paid off, all their debts paid off. But they decide they want to buy a house in Arizona. Well, if they pull $100,000 out of this, they add $100,000 to their income, they're going to get smoked in taxes. I mean, maybe they want to pull out 20 grand a year for 5 years and spread it out and take out a small mortgage. Or maybe they want to take 50 out of this, because I'm okay paying taxes on 50 grand based on where my income is, and then the other 50 out of this. Does that make sense? Is this too complicated, or is this okay?
No, it makes sense.
It's, I mean...
Somebody just needs to tell me what to do.
Well, there's 5 pieces of information I typically have people bring in when we're doing, like really diving into the weeds, and tax return is one of them. And I'm not a tax preparer, I'm not a CPA, but I know enough about them that I can at least pull out some tables, look at where your taxable income is. We can do a guess of about how it'll change, and I could give you a general idea of how much to do into each of them. And taxes are always a guess. We don't know until we file them if we're right or not, and either I owed them or they owed me because I was off or they were off, one way or the other. So we can get close, but we're never perfect. The other thing is investment statements, pension statements, any estate planning documents, if you've got wills, trusts, things like that that might be important, that might impact the financial plan, and a paycheck stub, just so I can see where you are at. What are you living on? What do you actually spend per month right now? I ask people that all the time, they're like, I don't know.
There's a limit on how much you can put, the limit for Roth is smaller than
So there's 2 ways to do a Roth.
403B, right?
You can do a 403B Roth, or you could do an IRA Roth.
Just to make it more complicated.
I know.
Yeah.
If you add the Roth word to 403B, to IRA, you add the Roth word to anything, it flips the tax law. If you're in a for-profit company, like if you work at IBM, you have a 401k. Nonprofits, Mayo's a nonprofit, they have a 403B. That's the only difference really between a 403B and a 401k is the employer for-profit or nonprofit. You guys, as a governmental nonprofit, are a 403B. But if I add the Roth word to it, I can do a 403B Roth. Now the 403B itself will hold between $19,000 and $25,000 per year for an individual. They don't care how you slice and dice it between the regular and the Roth. You just can't put more than that much in. And if you're age 49 or younger, you could do the 19. If you're age 50 or older, you could do the 25. The Roth, the IRA, anybody can set up an IRA. It's an individual retirement account. Doesn't matter if you're a plumber or a doctor. Anybody can set one of these up. The IRA will hold between $6,000 and $7,000 per year, depending on your age. So to address that, if you really wanted to max out a Roth, you could do a 403B Roth and put 25 grand a year in, and you could do a Roth IRA and put up to 70 a year in if you're age 50 or older. So technically you could get $32,000 into a Roth account in 1 year if you have the financial capability of doing that. And you're really trying hard to do that. Typically, when I see people jack these way up and max them out, it's because of taxes. Paid off my mortgage, I don't have kids to write off anymore, I just owed $3,000 in taxes this year, so they'll raise their 403B up, because now they're in their peak earning years and don't have any deductions, so I wanna lower taxes today, I wanna save taxes right now. Usually that's what I see, but not always. Yes, you had a question?
No, that's,
Sure?
yep.
I cut you off there, so. This slide is a little bit into the presentation, but see, this talks about Roth. You pay taxes on contributions, you pay no taxes on withdrawals. Does everybody understand this, or do you want me to go through one more analogy to help understand these? No, we're good? Okay. Beating that horse to death?
Just gonna go home and cry.
No, I mean, I hear that a lot. People say, oh gosh, I gotta work till 70, I'm so depressed when I hear this stuff. And that's not true at all. I run into a lot of people that think they're gonna have to work till 70, and when we actually look at the numbers, because if you think about it, let's say you're making, I don't know, 70 grand a year right now, how much of that do you actually receive to be able to spend? Probably half, right? I mean, when we look at our paycheck stubs, we don't get that top number. How much is withheld before you get it?
Not a lot.
Exactly. So what are you actually living on? Like,
Who's this FICA guy?
that was a Friends episode. Back in the day, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. What was I gonna say to that?
How much do you really need?
So on average, most people, when you look at your gross salary, you could live on like 60% of that, maybe 70% of that. Because when you're retired, are they gonna pull out money for Social Security? That's 7.5%. Are they pulling out money for PERA? It's 7.5%. Well, there's 15% off the top. Are you adding your 403B anymore? Probably not. That's 10% or 5%. There's 20 to 25%. So just without contributing to retirement, you save 20 to 25% of your check when you're retired. So you don't need to get back to the top number.
And hopefully the kids are supporting themselves.
Yeah, well, that's the next
I was
factor
just
that
looking
nobody
at
can
that
plan
the
for,
other
but.
To see how much wouldn't be taken out. I mean, seeing what expenses I wouldn't have, and, but then I had to add back in what it would cost for,
Health insurance.
Is it pretty much the same?
Health insurance
no,
is one thing that's keeping people working.
it came out a little bit ahead,
Okay.
yeah, but.
So that's why people bring in a paycheck stub, because I could have them track their expenses for 3 months and tell me how much they spend on electric and heat, but who really wants to do that? Has anybody ever tried to do that?
I do it every month.
It's hard. It's a lot of work.
Do you really?
I
Yes.
track all my
It's a
bills.
lot of work to save all your receipts and track all your expenses. But if I look at your paycheck stub and your direct deposit is $3,000 a month, well, if we can get close to that, it's safe to assume that you could keep living and not have to change too much. So it allows me to skip some steps for both my clients and for myself, if we just look at the paycheck stub and try to get as close as possible to that.
I think that's what we've talked about is, when we looked at ours, it's, we'll be living at about the same income level.
Mhm.
But I'm like, I wanna live better than that.
Well, and if which day of the week does everybody spend the most money? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday?
Saturday.
Friday.
So if you are not working and every day is a Saturday, you're gonna spend less in retirement? I mean, maybe, but probably not.
I didn't ask for my motorhome.
Yeah, there you go. I know.
Added up my
We're actually about out of time, guys.
Social Security
Sorry.
and my
I can come back and we can talk about some of these other topics. These other ones go pretty quick. Debt and mortgage is just a matter of when will those be done and what does your debt structure look at. This has to do with wills, estate planning, trusts, those are needed. And insurances is a pretty broad topic, because we talk about health insurance, life insurance, long-term care, getting care in your home through other programs. Life insurance might be a cost savings for people when they retire. Why would I mean, I need it. I have kids that are 5, 3, and 1, and I have a mortgage, and my wife has student loans. Like, if I died tomorrow, they're gonna be in a tough financial spot if I don't have any life insurance. But if I'm 65 years old and don't have any of those debts and my kids are supporting themselves, what do I need it for other than maybe to put me in the grave? Right? I mean, we all have the same goal when we retire. I want no debts and a big pile of money. Right? Well, when I have a lot of debt and no money, I need insurance. But as those tables turn, how much do I need? But healthcare is the one expense that tends to increase for people when they retire, and that's very difficult for us to plan around right now because it's expensive. And so we have to siphon off a chunk of people's 403B accounts, or set aside some HSA or HRA dollars. I mean, we have to plan for health insurance. How much do you need? And I've been doing a ton of these lately. We shift anywhere from 20 to 60 to 70 grand into an account for somebody that has no risk, and then we set up a drip plan where it's going to pay them their $1,000 or $1,500, whatever they need per month, and that's what they pay their health insurance with. And that's one of the main plans that I'm setting up for people to be able to retire right now, because that's what we're solving for. They can figure everything else out but health insurance. I have a lot of people who come into my office, got everything ironed out. I don't know how to pay for my health insurance. I hear that weekly. And so those are the plans that we're building out most commonly right now to get people through that age 65 when Medicare kicks in. Medicare is not free, but it is much, much cheaper than just going out to the open market and buying your insurance.
If it's still around.
Find me a politician that'll get rid of it. I agree with you from a numeric standpoint with Social Security and Medicare, but politicians won't touch it. It's almost like, you know, I go back to my AP history class book or textbook, when they talked about the slavery debate way back in the day, that the politicians kept kicking the can down the road because nobody wanted to tackle it because they wouldn't get votes. And they did it until eventually we broke out in a civil war over it. Now, I hope this doesn't go to that extreme, but that's what they've been doing with their budget. Is their budget going down every year? Is the US deficit shrinking? Which way is it going? I mean, can that continue forever? Right? These are facts that we all know. And everybody that's sitting in the Senate, in the House, in the Oval Office, everybody knows that. And if they don't, then they have literally not opened a newspaper for the last 50 years. But who wants to tackle that particular issue? Because it's a pretty big issue. And it affects who votes, who shows up at the polls. The 22-year-olds don't. Right? You guys are an intelligent group that probably does a lot more voting, but when we look at the general population, what is it? Does 20% of our population even show up at the polls? It's like a dismal number.
We had, what was it, 62% or something turnout for the last election or something?
In Minnesota is the #1 state for voter
But that's we're number one.
Yeah.
And we're we're over 50%. All right, I'm gonna have to wrap up there just due
We
to
got
time.
your one slide, woo!
You know, though, that's why we built this. This slide is kind of
That's a
for
lot
this
of
reason.
information.
And this is like drinking from a fire hose. I don't expect everybody to remember all this stuff while you're here today, because it's just, there's a lot of little things that you have to remember. And that's tough.
So if we wanted to set up a time with you to look at our individual, how do we go about that and what's the cost?
Shoot me an email or give me a call. I don't charge for consultations to meet with people. Everybody in this room can attest to that. I've met with everybody in here, well, almost everybody in here at least once. And sometimes it's just to get a 403B set up. Sometimes we're going through a lot of detailed information. Sometimes we're talking about investments. People utilize me in different ways wherever I go. Those that are fairly self-sufficient might just use me for a conduit for their 403B to get the dollars into an account and have somebody manage it. Other people have me, I can't really set up budgets. I can't get that detailed because I can't follow you around the grocery store and tell you to buy the generic brands instead of the name brand. And like, we just can't do that. I mean, I can help give guidance on that, but
Tony's
I can
voice
help
in
with
your head.
most of the other stuff. Yeah, I'm the white angel.
I just read this book that was fully, not real, but they had an app that basically had all your budget and everything, and anywhere you'd go and say, this is what you can buy here, 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 this is what you should order in this meal, so that you would stay in all your expenses.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So that begs the question, you know,
I'd be like, why are you telling me what to do?
does anybody think Big Brother is good or bad?
Huh?
You do the opposite.
You know what I mean?
Not good.
Well, but we want it. I want to ask my phone how to get to a location, and I want it to go right where I am, so it walks me straight there. I mean, is Big Brother good or bad?
We always had that discussion at our house because we're opposite on that.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
well, your husband had
He's
different
kind of
background,
like-
yeah.
They don't need to know that. And I'm like, that's fine.
Unless you're doing something illegal, who cares?
Well, exactly, that's what he goes, well, you want them to read your emails or your Facebook? And I said,
What are you saying?
it's like,
Yeah.
I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
I just don't, I don't want people looking at my stuff.
I don't care.
Could ruin my political career.
It's a wonderful conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no problem.
thank you.
If you want me to come back, if you want me to touch on some other topics, I can expand on any one of these particular. You could probably just pick something from the slide and I could take
There's
30
probably
or
a lot
40
of
minutes
stuff
to
in
go
the closet that
through.
we forgot about.
I
Maybe
wonder
one
how to
for
put that
political
slide back
office
up
so
and
they
read
can
it.
think
And do
that
it
we
again.
got
I
it.
forgot my life.
No, I'd be happy to do that, yeah. No, I
That'd be a
enjoyed
good
it.
idea. I vote for
Okay,
that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're worse.
Part two being cool.
Not from the third, or part two. Oh, I think we're about even.
We should make more.
Maybe what I do next time is I just bring the TRA and PERA presentation and we just talk about that. Because that's gonna be, when we look at the picture, that's the most significant piece of everybody's retirement. And so to drill down on this and some of the options and some of the questions people have on that might be more valuable. I mean, I love talking about investments, but I lose people when I get into those slides so pretty quickly.
No, I don't match.
Might be good.
And we have in your book, this is the TRA one, but the presentation that's directly behind the accumulating and managing
SSC would contribute.
is the TRA presentation that we have, and we have another one that's pink, but it says PERA on it to change the color so we know which
I
one.
thought it was 3% of what you were.
Even though it says TRA, it's all the same information for para?
So, I'll tell you
Do we
what's
have a map
different.
that we can put in?